Oh, Piastri has done it now, man. He really has. He really has. Okay, so disclaimer, they're doing construction work near my house. There's nothing I can do about my background. Y'all are just gonna have to put up with it. Let's talk about Baku because Oscar Piastri just had one of the worst weekends by a title contender I think I've ever seen in my life, man. Genuinely ever. I'm just watching some of the practice footage. This guy was tapping the wall repeatedly across sessions. But it wasn't enough to destroy the car. He saved that for quali. Piastri buries his car into the barriers in Q3. As a result, he starts 9th. And the only reason he starts 9th is because Leclerc binned it earlier. So Leclerc started 10th, he was 9th. And then we fast forward to the next day, the race comes. He jumps the start, which I believe may have been due to a clutch issue, but I can't confirm. But he jumps the start. And then he drops to last. It's one thing to jump the start. You can jump the start and actually make up spots. You can jump the start and like skyrocket to the lead. I've seen Alonso do it. But when Piastri jumped the start, he was so shocked by the fact that he jumped the start that he stopped again, causing him to drop to last place. He drops to last place. And in an effort to frantically make up the spots that he lost, Piastri buries his car into the barriers, again, almost identical to how he did it the day before in quali. And as a result, he leaves Baku with no points scored. To minimize the losses, though, Lando Norris qualified 7th, and he couldn't finish that well either. He finished 7th again, behind Tsunoda, behind Lawson, behind the two Mercs, behind Max Verstappen. So, in theory, this could have been way worse for Oscar Piastri. But again, McLaren didn't really look like a car capable of really... It wasn't a guaranteed win as far as I'm concerned. But they would have at least been on the podium, I think, if they had a decent weekend. So, though Piastri only loses 6 points to Norris, this is a very, 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 very bad weekend, in my opinion. It's one of the worst weekends I've ever seen by a title contender. And the gap is now 25 points exactly. It is exactly a race win. And a Norris fan was bringing up, I saw a Norris fan bring up on Twitter. I wish I had their at so I could give them the credit. I'll hopefully find it by the time I upload this. But Piastri gained exactly 25 points on Norris in Zandvoort because Norris's engine blew up. And now we fast forward to Baku ending, and now it's exactly 25 points. So the amount of points that Norris lost to Piastri in Zandvoort is the gap that they have to go with from this point in the season going on to the end. And I don't know, man. I tweeted a couple weeks ago, or last race rather, Piastri should have treated Monza as a must-win. Monza should have been a must-win race for Piastri. Because I think if Piastri had won that, after Zandvoort, if Piastri had won that race, he would have gained, at the very least, 7 points on Norris's head. And that's at the very least. And fast forward to now, looking at how Monza played out, maybe a win wasn't on the cards. But he probably could have beaten Norris that weekend. But, you know, he had a very shaky lap 1. That put him behind Leclerc. He managed to get back past Leclerc, but he never got past Norris on pure pace. He jumped him because of the slow pit stop, and Norris he ended up giving that spot back to Norris thanks to team orders. Now, this even brings that up into light. Will Piastri regret that in light of how bad Baku was for him? Because he loses out. Let's see. Norris finishes 2nd in Monza. Piastri finishes 3rd. So that's 18 to 15. That's not too many points. But then he loses 6 more. He loses 6 more to Norris this weekend. Right? So he loses the 3 points to him in Monza, and he loses 6 more to him. That's 9 overall. He loses 9 points in 2 races. And again, now we're going to go to Singapore, which is a Norris stronghold, quote unquote. I think Norris is very good around Singapore. So if Norris wins Singapore, and God forbid, at least for Piastri, Verstappen comes 2nd, then Norris gets a 10-point swing on Piastri. And this is all since Zandvoort. So since Zandvoort, if worst case scenario, Norris wins Singapore with Verstappen 2nd, Piastri's 3rd, then that is a 10 points swing, another 10 points gained on Piastri's head top. That means, how many points is that over 3 races? 19. That's a 19-point gain. And that would reduce the championship lead to 15 points. Listen, man, as long as you're within a race win of somebody, it's never over, right? Norris had his brain farts earlier in the season. He crashed in he crashed in Jeddah quali. He had a terrible Bahrain where he made what should have been a P2 into a P3. Crashed in Canada. And there were things out of Norris's control. He had the slow stop in Monza, which he obviously got back for. But he had a slow stop in Baku. I genuinely think Norris could have finished on the podium in Baku. Or at the very least 4th, if they gave him a stop quick enough to come out ahead of Lawson. Because I think Norris on pace is quicker than Lawson in clean air. But because Norris was trapped behind not only Lawson, but then Tsunoda, there's nothing he could do. He was trapped in P7 when that P7 could have been a P4. And then we'd be talking about a gap less than 25 points. Yeah? Because then Norris would have finished what? P4? P4 is what? 12 points? That would have given him 6 more points than he has now. So he would have had, what? It would have been a 19-point gap off of my quick maths. It would have been a 19-point gap, which would have been even better for him. So Norris has had things go wrong, and he's also had his fair share of brain farts. So he has the engine failure, and he's had a couple slow stops this season. But on top of that, he's made his mistakes. He's crashed out of quali session in Jeddah, crashed out in Canada. Those were weekends where he should have locked in. Bahrain's another one where he should have been P2 and he didn't finish P2. Right? You could even argue Suzuka, but you could actually hold that. You could hold both of them accountable for that. I think Suzuka was a winnable race for McLaren, and both drivers didn't lock in quali. But alas, we move. Even Imola, you could argue if Piastri manages to hold on to the lead on lap 1, maybe he wins that race and gives himself an extra buffer. But this is what we need to start talking about now. If Singapore goes well for Max Verstappen, if Max Verstappen so much as finishes top 2 in Singapore, if he manages to beat at least one McLaren in Singapore, and in my opinion, that McLaren is preferably Piastri, because Piastri is a championship leader. So Verstappen can piggyback on Norris's title charge as he tries to chase Piastri. Because Verstappen is now less than 50 points off of Lando Norris, with a good amount of races left in the season plus sprints, right? If Max Verstappen has a good Singapore Grand Prix, then that will prove that the Red Bull all around is a good car, because yes, he's won the last 2 Grand Prix, but those are quick tracks, yeah? Those are straight line speed focused tracks. We've been running the skinny wings these past 2 weekends. So it's easy to think that maybe the Red Bull is good at a certain track type as opposed to a good car overall that can compete everywhere. We saw in Singapore where Max came 9th on pure pace. On the purest possible pace, Max came 9th. You have Silverstone is another race where Max threw away a podium because he spun under safety car. You have Spain. There's so many races that Max didn't get the desired points total. Even you go back to Austria, where he gets killed by Antonelli. If you were to tidy up all of those races, Verstappen would literally be right there. And then we'd really be having serious discussions about a 3-way title fight. But we're not having those right now. But if Verstappen cooks in Singapore, that will prove that the Red Bull is better now than it was then. And if it can cook on such a high downforce track, then it bodes well for the rest of the season. And then the McLaren guys are going to start sweating. I genuinely, it's obviously too soon to say who's going to win this championship. Right? I think we're seeing a better Piastri now than we saw last year. We're seeing probably a weaker Norris now than we saw last year. But I think Norris is starting to find his form a bit more. I think he's starting to find back his form a bit. Especially over the past few weeks. It's not over, man. It really isn't over, bro. This is reminding me of like 2016 low key. Well, this is a 2016 if Ricardo was probably closer to them than he was, you know? This is almost given. This could low-key end up being a 2007 scenario. We could be seeing Verstappen emulate '07 Raikkonen and slowly but surely creep his way into this title fight. Yeah? But you look at all three of these guys, Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, all three of them have had instances this season that would have made their season way better if it didn't happen. They've all made mistakes. Piastri had this weekend plus Australia. I always look at the season and think, what if Piastri had just kept it on the track in Australia and finished at worst third? At worst third, he'd have had 15 points more to his name as opposed to 2 more. He would have had 13 more points because he scored 2. It's not like he didn't score any points. He scored 2 points in Australia, but he could have been 15, which would have been 13 more points than he has right now. And if he had 13 more points than he has right now, his championship lead would be what? 33? No? It would have been what? 37? 38? 38, something like that. If he had 13 more points than he does now. It's a lot, man. That's a lot. I don't know where this is gonna go, man, but I've never been this intrigued before. This has been the most intriguing weekend of the season because I think we might be in for a banger. We're already in for a banger with Norris and Piastri as is, but this wild card with Verstappen in it, very interesting. Will we look back at Baku and see this weekend as the weekend where Piastri threw it all away? But even then, let me contradict that because I don't even know how well Piastri could have done today if he didn't crash out. Where would he have finished if he didn't bin it? 8th? Behind Norris? Norris came 7th. Where would Piastri have finished? 8th? 9th? 10th? That wouldn't have even been that many points. But it would have been better than nothing. And if Piastri loses the championship by more than 6 points, we'll remember Baku, man. We'll remember Baku. But yes, will this be a weekend that Piastri looks back and regrets? Obviously he will, but how much will he regret it? Will he think of it as a weekend where he could have scored more points, or will he think of it as the weekend that probably cost him his maiden Formula One World Championship? We're gonna have to watch and see. Haven't been talking that much F1. I stopped the MVP series because they weren't doing well and they were taking a lot of time to make. But this race got me back into making F1 commentary, man. Let's see what happens. Intern out.